Good evening, Cambridge. I'm extremely happy to see you all this Thursday. It's 8:30 and it's time for a Good Evening Cambridge show where we're going to discuss something really important. Tonight we're going to discuss something really important because I want to talk about the presidential candidates 2016. We're going to cover three of the candidates tonight. Last week we got familiar with Carly Fiorina, Jim Gilmore, and Lindsey Graham, and today I'm going to continue the list of presidential candidates 2016. And one of them is Mike Huckabee. Mike Huckabee served as governor of Arkansas from 1996 to 2007. Following his failed campaign for the GOP presidential nomination in 2008, he hosted the Huckabee Show on Fox News until early 2015. Huckabee is well known for his very conservative position on social and cultural issues, and was an ordained Southern Baptist minister prior to becoming Arkansas lieutenant governor. Huckabee is critical of some conservative economic politics, such as reforming Social Security. Here are some of the Mike Huckabee political positions regarding certain things. For example, abortion. Huckabee opposes any public funding for abortion and believes that abortion should be illegal only when the life of the mother is at risk. Healthcare. Huckabee opposed Obama's healthcare plan, the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. Huckabee pays attention to black vote and holds that the GOP should not ignore Hispanics. I found a video for you, which one I want to show. I hope we're gonna go
Morning, Governor. Thanks for coming in this morning. I want to start with yesterday's appearance by Trump, the spectacle on his helicopter giving rides for kids. I spent a lot of time with you back in 2008 when you won Iowa by doing it the old-fashioned way. You had retail politics, you had a ground game. Has Trump changed the game, sir?
I don't think so. I mean, look, Donald Trump is a phenomenon, and he's doing very well. I don't have a helicopter. I don't know that any other candidates will. But let me tell you what we're doing. We're organizing the old-fashioned way. There are 99 counties in Iowa. We've organized 71 of them. In South Carolina, there are 46 counties. We've organized already in 32 of them. We visited over half of the counties in each of those early primary states, and we understand that this is like a NASCAR race. There's 200 laps. We're maybe in lap number 10. We've got a long way to go before anybody's going to see a checkered flag, and you win by organizing and building structure in those counties, because it's not how many headlines you get, it's how many voters show up at the caucuses and the primaries.
So you're announcing this morning that you do have an organizing team in Iowa and South Carolina, but do you really think that that is the way things are going to happen this time? I mean, Donald Trump, yes, I understand it's early, and maybe some of this polling may be because he's different and he is a celebrity and all that, but you never know. This could be kind of the Kardashianization of the caucuses. Well,
it could be, but I want to salute Donald Trump. I mean, he is a master at branding. There's no one like him. He's alone in his class at being able to get attention. Latest survey showed, Dana, that he's getting 10 times the press coverage than any other candidate. Well, I'm just going to be real clear with you. You give me 10 times the coverage that any other candidate gets, I'll be leading in the polls. But the point is, at this stage of the game, the polls don't necessarily reflect where things end up. Otherwise, we'd have had a nominee named Rudy Giuliani 8 years ago and one named Michelle Bachmann 4 years ago. That's why we're not in a panic. We're doing what we know we have to do, and it's been helpful to have done this before. We're organizing, structuring, building this thing one block at a time. It's like a Lego set, and you have to put the pieces together one at a time.
Now, Governor, you are originally from Arkansas. That's, of course, where you served. You are familiar with the Clinton foibles, if you will. Donald Trump told Sean Hannity this week that Monica Lewinsky, Paula Jones, and other women involved with Bill Clinton are fair game against Hillary Clinton. Do you agree?
I don't know that we have to go there, because there's plenty about Hillary's record that gives us all the ammunition we need. I do understand the Clintons very well. I fought against their political machine every time I was on the ballot. That's what a lot of Republicans have not yet figured out when they say, my gosh, who can we put up against Hillary? Well, there's only one candidate on that stage among Republicans who has effectively and successfully and repeatedly challenged the Clinton political machine, and that's me.
So
but to
stay
get
away
into the
from
personal
stay away
lives,
from the Bill
I don't
Clinton?
think that's necessary.
Interesting.
Yeah, he's not on the ballot. Hillary is.
That is true. That is
But
true.
look, Dana, let me mention this. I think that there's going to be some things she'll have to answer for. What happened the night of Benghazi? What about those emails? What about the private server? What about the fact that she did not follow the law and protocol? There are plenty of things, including the reset button with Russia. We've got to ask her why, after 4 years of Secretary of State, that we had not one country on this planet with whom we had a better relationship than we did when she first took office as Secretary of State. So there's plenty to talk about that is a much more important reason to not let Hillary Clinton be the third term of Barack Obama.
Speaking of relationships with other countries, we have a little scoop here on State of the Union this morning. You are planning to leave the campaign trail and make a trip to Israel this coming Tuesday. We talked about Iowa and the organizing. Why is it more important to be in Israel than in Iowa right now?
Well, there's several activities. We'll only be there a couple of days, but as you know, I've been going to Israel for 42 years. My first trip was in 1973. I've been dozens and dozens of times. I've got a lot of friends there, and a lot of Americans live there. We're doing some fundraising, but more importantly, I'll also be visiting with a number of officials and discussing the Iranian deal, because I think it is the most dangerous situation that we face, not just for the Middle East, but for the rest of the world in a long time. This is essentially arming and equipping a terrorist state. The Iranian government is not to be trusted. And for 36 years, they've kidnapped Americans, they've killed Americans, they hold Americans hostage right now, and we're being pushed to get into a deal that gives us nothing, but gives the Iranians the capacity to ultimately end up with a nuclear weapon, and that's just insane.
Governor, I want to bring it back home and to an issue that's really been percolating in the Republican race, the issue of abortion. Now, you oppose abortion even in cases of rape and incest. I want to ask about a story because it's really getting a lot of attention from our readers on CNN.com. A 10-year-old girl was raped by her stepfather in Paraguay, and the government wouldn't allow her to have an abortion because that's the policy there. The girl, who's now just 11, had the baby. If you're president and you have your druthers, that would be the policy here. Some of your Republican opponents say it's too extreme. What do you say?
I think what we have to do, Dana, is remember that creating one problem that is horrible. I mean, let nobody be misled. A 10-year-old girl being raped is horrible. But does it solve a problem by taking the life of an innocent child? And that's really the issue. I know people. I worked for a man for several years, James Robinson, who was the result of a rape. His mother went to 3 doctors in Houston, Texas in 1943, begged doctors to abort the baby. None of them would do it. They all refused. Today, his organization feeds, cares for, and brings living capacity for water to hundreds of thousands of people across the world. That would never have happened, Dana. So when I think about one horror, I also think about the possibilities that exist, and I just don't want to think that somehow we discount a human life.
And that's understandable, but you know the flip side is looking in the eyes of a 10-year-old girl, saying, you know, you had this horrible thing happen to you, and you're going to have to carry it out for the next 9 months. I mean, that's also not easy.
No, it isn't easy, and I wouldn't even pretend that it's anything other than a terrible tragedy. But let's not compound the tragedy by taking yet another life. And I always think we sometimes miss the fact that when an abortion happens, there are 2 victims. One is the child. The other is that birth mother, who often will go through extraordinary guilt years later when she begins to think through what happened with the baby, with her. And again, there are no easy answers here. And I realize there are some people that will be very different in their view of this than me, and I respect that. I don't want to get into a shouting match with people who think I'm wrong. I respect that. But I just come down on the side that life is precious. Every life has worth and value. I don't think we discount the intrinsic worth of any human being. And I don't know where else to go with it, but just to be consistent and say, if life matters, and that's a person, then every life matters.
Governor, before we go, I just have to ask you quickly about something you said in the last debate. You said that the military is not a social experiment, talking about the idea of transgender or so forth going into the...
I will have to interrupt this video because we don't really have much time. I would like to continue and talk about other candidates. So next on my list is Bobby Jindal. He has been the governor of Louisiana since 2008. Born to immigrants from India, Jindal is one of the few candidates with a non-white ethnic background. Prior to becoming governor, Jindal served in Congress for 3 years. Unlike other governors who might run for president, there is a little wonder about Jindal's national policy position. He's already raised national policy plans on education, healthcare, national defense, and energy through America Next, his policy shop. Let's take a look. I found a video about Bobby Jindal. I hope you're gonna like it.
Talking a lot about this. We have decided we are going to be running for this election. Maybe you'll get a chance if you behave to go back to Iowa. Would you like that?
You like Iowa, don't you?
Giving the politically correct answer there about the state of Iowa. That was Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal's somewhat unconventional announcement video from earlier this week where he broke the news to his children that he was running for president. We've also learned that New Jersey's Governor Chris Christie will jump into the race for the Republican nomination on Tuesday. And that now takes the number of declared major Republican candidates to 14. Interestingly, Jindal and Christie do have something in common. They're both one-time rising stars of the party who are getting hit hard in their own states. And they'll both be hoping somehow to turn their problems in their backyards into advantages to show that they have the conviction to lead, even if unpopular, on the national stage. I'm joined now by the governor of Louisiana, Bobby Jindal. Welcome back to Meet the Press, Governor.
Chuck, thank you for having me. Of course my kids love Iowa. If they know of Iowa, they went to the Iowa State Fair. They had a deep-fried candy bar. Who wouldn't love that?
There you go. Pander, pander, pander away. Let me start with this. Put up this map here. Just one state in the union has not issued any marriage license since the court ruling on Friday, and it is your state in Louisiana. Even there's been some in Mississippi, in some counties in Mississippi, some in Texas. Can you explain why your state hasn't implemented the law yet?
Sure, Chuck, look, I strongly disagree with the court's ruling. According to Chief Justice Roberts, they weren't even reading, this has nothing to do with the Constitution, but of course we're going to comply with the court order. We don't have a choice. Our agencies will comply with the court order. We were in a situation where we actually had it in our state constitution that marriage is between a man and a woman. A local federal judge actually upheld that. It was upheld. We are now waiting for the Fifth Circuit to reverse that ruling. They'll implement the Supreme Court's order. We've got no choice to comply, even though I think this decision was the wrong one.
So how quickly do you think you'll end up complying with the law?
Well, look, it'll be up to the court. As soon as they issue their ruling, I suspect it'll be a matter of days. I don't know how quickly they will move.
All right.
But Chuck, look, I do support, I know there are efforts in Congress to restore our 10th Amendment rights in response to this ruling, especially when it comes to marriage. I think the court shouldn't have ignored the 10th Amendment. Here's where the next fight's going. I think the left is now going to go after our First Amendment rights. I think it is wrong for the federal government to force Christian individuals, businesses, pastors, churches to participate in wedding ceremonies that violate our sincerely held religious beliefs. We have to stand up and fight for religious liberty. That's where this fight is going. The left wants to silence us. Hillary Clinton wants to silence us. We're not going away.
Well, I want to get you to respond, because you bring up a couple of debate points here that have that are familiar. But first, I want you to respond to this. This is from Rick Grinnell. He's a longtime conservative foreign policy voice, worked in the Bush administration, and he makes a conservative case for same-sex marriage, writing this on FoxNews.com. The debate on marriage within the Republican Party has been hijacked by those who wish to dictate their beliefs onto others. The only true conservative position, the individual right of marriage for all, has been affirmed by the Supreme Court. It's time for consistent conservatives to come out in favor of the court's ruling. That's a conservative argument for same-sex marriage. Why do you believe he's wrong?
Well, look, I think he's wrong. I think Hillary Clinton, I think President Obama's wrong. Chuck, look, all your viewers know that both the President and Hillary evolve their views because of opinion polls. They can read opinion polls just like the Supreme Court. My view of marriage is based on my Christian faith. No earthly court's decision is going to change that. I think marriage is between a man and a woman. Now, look, I think we're all created equal in God's eyes, and I think we need to respect and love those we disagree with. I think we can have religious liberty without discrimination. My views on marriage aren't evolving with the polls. I can read polls just like the president can. It's based on my faith. I think it should remain between a man and a woman.
Now, the issue of religion and faith was used in the 60s during the debate about interracial marriage. None other than former President Harry Truman. Here's the New York Times from September 12, 1963. The headline, Truman opposes biracial marriage, and here is his reasoning, Governor. He said that racial intermarriage ran counter to teachings of the Bible. So are you comfortable using religion as a way to defend your position on marriage?
Chuck, I am. Look, I think it's offensive to evangelical Christians, to Catholics that are trying to follow their church's teachings, and millions of other Americans who believe that marriage is between a man and a woman. It has been taught in our faith for centuries. It was just a few years ago the position held by President Obama and Secretary Clinton. This wasn't just a Republican position. So I think it's offensive to try to equate the two. I'm glad that America has moved towards a much better view on race relations. I've said we need to stop viewing ourselves as hyphenated Americans. We're not African Americans or Indian Americans. We're all Americans. I think viewing people by the color of their skin is one of the dumbest ways to view people. I've written that. I have said that. So I think it's offensive to equate evangelical Christians, Catholics, others that view marriages between a man and a woman as being racist. We're not racist. We love our fellow man. We think we're all equal under God's eyes. We simply believe that marriage, we don't believe we should change the definition of marriage simply because of opinion polls or because of a court that, quite frankly, isn't looking at the Constitution. Earlier this week, Scalia says that words no longer have meaning in their Obamacare decision. So you now have a court that's not reading the Constitution, not reading the dictionary. Why couldn't the court have said, we're going to respect the decisions made by the states? Why not say, we're going to defer to the elected representatives of the people?
I want to go to the launch of your campaign. You don't start out, at least at home. It's not like you're getting a good favorite son send-off. Here's your job approval rating, the most recent poll, Southern Media and Opinion Research, sitting at 32%. That was actually lower than President Obama's job rating in the state of Louisiana. And then I've put a summary together of what has been Republican criticism of your tenure as governor. Jennifer Rubin, conservative columnist in the Washington Post, says you suffer from awkward overeagerness. A Republican state representative, Chris Broadwater, says that he's concerned that your campaign doesn't reflect who you really are. Eric Erickson, an influential movement conservative, wrote this about one of your appearances, that you throw rhetorical bombs simply to get notice. Ramesh Ponnuru, the National Review, called one of your plans, your health care plan, simply would cause millions to lose coverage. You don't deal with that. Former Republican Governor Buddy Roemer says when it comes to the Baton Rouge that you've gone AWOL. What's happened here? Why do so many Republicans seem concerned, critical of your tenure as governor and of your launch here on the national stage?
Well, Chuck, two things. If I were afraid of polls, I never would have been elected in 2 landslide elections. We think a highest percentage in our state's last election for governor. If I were afraid of polls, we wouldn't have privatized our charity hospital system, wouldn't cut our state budget 26%, wouldn't have cut over 30,000 state government bureaucrats, wouldn't have done statewide school choice. Here's the real record. In Louisiana, we've got more people working than ever before, earning a higher income than ever before. We're a top 10 state for private sector job creation. Chuck, when you do that, you're going to make the big government people unhappy. We've upset the apple cart. We've taken on the status quo. We've made big changes. Secondly, I've said in my campaign, I want to run a campaign where we embrace our principles. Establishment Republicans don't want us to do that. Jeb Bush says we've got to be willing to lose the primary in order to win the general election. I strongly disagree with that. Let me translate that for you. What some of those Republicans are saying, what Jeb Bush is saying is we've got to hide who we are. Nonsense. We don't just need to send a Republican to D.C. We need to send somebody who will
We have to go to the next candidate, which is John Kasich. Kasich has served as the governor of Ohio since 2011. Kasich, excuse me. Kasich has an 18-year stay in Congress until he decided against re-election. Instead, trying a presidential bid that That didn't last beyond the 2000 Iowa state law straw poll. Early in his time as a governor, Kasich signed a law strictly limiting collective bargaining rights. But the law was overturned in a referendum. Kasich has been criticized by conservatives for expanding medical in Ohio through Obamacare and also for his support for common care. Take a look on the screen.
Welcome back. Staying with the battle for the Republican presidential nomination. I'm joined by former governor of Ohio, John Kasich, who is now expected to formally enter the presidential race later this summer. Governor Kasich, welcome back to Meet the Press. Am I characterizing that correctly?
I'm not former, I'm still governor.
You're still governor.
Hey, listen, before you get into the questions, we were talking early in the show about the quality of people in public life. And let me just say that I don't always agree with them, but you know, Joe Biden is a special guy. And you think about this. He lost a wife, a daughter, and now a son, and he continues to serve. So we start thinking about the quality of people. Joe Biden, whether you agree with him or not, he's a real guy. He's a real stand-up guy, and I'm going to pray for him because he's had a lifetime of tears. And God bless you, Joe.
You couldn't say it better myself, Governor Kasich. I appreciate you starting off that way. Let me ask you about where you are in this timetable. You've been here before. You said you were exploring. Now it sounds like you want to announce at the end of the month. Is that why wouldn't you announce at this point? Why wouldn't you run?
Well, if I think I can't win, Chuck, I wouldn't do it because I don't want to burden my family and my friends. So we have some internal metrics, both on organization, and I'm pleased that former Senator John Sununu has agreed to kind of head things up in New Hampshire, which is the best guy you can get, and it's resources too. And you know, I raise money the old-fashioned way. I go out and tell people what I think, and you know, and I say to them, if you hire me, I'm a CEO, and you know, I'll listen to you, but at the end of the day, I'm going to make the decision, something I've done throughout my whole career with, frankly, great success. So, look, I'm optimistic about where we are. I mean, I'm optimistic on the resources. I'm becoming more and more optimistic on the organization. And I don't need to do this to have a good life, but I think I can help serve my country. I've got the most unique resume and a terrific record, and I've had a great team of people around me. And so, Chuck, we'll see. I love my country, and if I can really step up and help it, I intend to do it.
A lot of people put you in the same, if you divide up these candidates, there's so many of you that may be in the race, but in different heats, and many of you put you in the Jeb Bush heat. And you said something interesting to Dan Balls in an interview you did earlier this week. You say, I don't know anything about Jeb Bush's theme. I really don't. I've never listened to him. What's right to rise? Getting up in the morning. It was awfully snarky. I take it you believe that Jeb Bush has done nothing to convince you he's a better candidate than you would be.
Well, look, I like Jeb, and I don't know, it might have been one of those days where I just wanted to say something that was, you know, kind of funny. Maybe you didn't take it that way, but Chuck, here's the situation. I was the chairman of the Budget Committee when we balanced the budget in Washington. That was the first time since man walked on the moon. I did it with the Clinton administration, and we got it done, Pete Domenici and I and the other team. I was also on the Armed Services Committee and was involved in military reform, including the most significant reform of the military that many say in 50 years with the Goldwater-Nichols bill to get the services to work together. I went into the private sector for 10 years where I learned so much, and now as governor of Ohio, we've gone from basically a state that was dead to a state that's optimistic and growing, and we just announced on Friday Amazon locating a big facility here in the Midwest. I mean, we're growing jobs, we've cut the most amount of taxes. Chuck, with that resume, national security, success in Washington, and success as an executive, I mean, I think it's the best resume and really a terrific record.
Hey, let me ask you something about that happened this week in another Midwestern state. The state of Nebraska decided to stop the death penalty altogether. And there's different reasons why they did it. You have had a temporary moratorium in Ohio. I want to read you something that a former predecessor of yours wrote recently. Bob Taft wrote this in December of last year. The death penalty is very costly to administer. Lengthy trial and appellate procedures put a burden on county and state governments to pay for lawyers, judges, and jails. It may be time to ask the question whether the death penalty in Ohio is a dead man walking. Do you agree with his assessment that basically the death penalty is done in Ohio?
No, I don't agree with that, Chuck. Look, we're just looking for the drugs that we need to administer it.
And in this debate, sometimes we forget the victims. Listen, I review all these cases, and some people I've said we will let them stay for a life in prison if I wasn't certain of who did what. But I've had these grieving families come to see me, Chuck, people who've had their mothers who have been gunned down. And look, it's about justice, and it isn't about revenge, it's about justice. And I support the death penalty and will continue to do that because a lot of times families want closure when they see justice done. We're in a tricky situation here because of the lack of drugs, but no, I think you administer it sparingly. But frankly, at the end of the day, when it comes to me, everybody's had a look at these cases, and I get the final say. And I try to remember, I don't try to, I remember the victims when I consider this.
And I know you're a deeply religious man, your Catholic faith. Do you struggle with where you are on this and where the church is?
No, I don't, Chuck, because, look, I said it as clearly as I can. I think it is about justice. And, you know, I think it's consistent with my faith. If it didn't, I'd have to exercise it. But look, at the end of the day,
Unfortunately, we
I'm
run out
also
of the
the
time
secular
to
official, right?
see the rest of the video. And the previous videos was a little bit short, but we're going to continue next week. I hope I'm going to see you all next Thursday, 8:30, Cambridge TV, Cambridge Community Television. Channel 9, please. I will see you all. Follow me on Facebook. Like my page on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Bye.